just this past week, President Trump had a former terrorist at the White House. Why?
I don't know how people aren't up in arms about this, because he's a terrible person who should never be allowed to step foot on U.S. soil.
Let alone the White House.
This really exposes how hollow American foreign policy is. You can't take a terrorist, put him in a nice suit, and put him in the White House and pretend it's a good thing. This is insane.
Everyone's favorite senator, of course, who shut down the government in 2013 over health care. He is now trying to reprise his campaign from back in the day.
I would be very surprised if Ted Cruz is running.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he ran, because these are entitled, out-of-touch politicians.
This is the same dude who fled to Cancun in the middle of a snowstorm that claimed the lives of hundreds of Americans in Texas. He wants to be the president of the United States? Yeah, I don't think so.
So the whole idea here is, you know, your loved ones might pass away, but AI has the ability to kind of like bring this artificial version of them to your life. That video makes me emotional just because like my mom's going through cancer and recovering from it. And this is the kind of stuff that would theoretically appeal to me, but it actually doesn't at all. Regardless of how good AI is, they're not going to capture who my mom really is.
My response to this whole thing is going to be an Emily Dickinson quote. She said this, that it will never come again is what makes life so beautiful. Hi everyone, we are so happy to be back. This is our most intimate episode yet. Just 3 people today. Yeah, we are super excited to have the one and only Emerald Robinson dressed in emerald. Very happy to have you. She is the former chief White House correspondent for OAN and Newsmax, and she is currently the host of Absolute Truth on Lindell TV. Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm so pleased to be with you, and I feel special to be the third one with you today.
You are a force to be reckoned with, so we are absolutely delighted to have you. We have quite a lineup for you today, and we're starting it with our beloved Anna. She's going to talk about apparent alleged terrorist at the White House. President Trump.
Former terrorist.
Or it's what we call a recovering terrorist, right?
A recovering terrorist.
Exactly.
Or as they say with the CIA, you're never former, right? That's how I feel about terrorists.
Once a terrorist, always a terrorist. So Anna's going to cover Trump hosting Ahmed al-Sharaa. Did I butcher that name?
No, you did a great job.
Thank you. Who used to be a wanted terrorist with a $10 million bounty on his head. And I'm going to give you the latest on the 2028 race. You better believe that it's already underway. And California just revoked 17,000 immigrant commercial driver's licenses. And PepsiCo gets naked with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Yeah, that happened. A lot is going down in the food industry. These companies are trying to cater to RFK Jr. We're going to tell you about the dynamics there. And finally, Anna's going to cover artificial intelligence and its power to bring back our loved ones from the dead, which is really interesting. But we're going to start off again with just this past week, President Trump had a former terrorist at the White House. Why? What happened, Anna? Tell us.
Well, in order to understand why Ahmed al-Sharaa, who's now the new leader of Syria, has basically had his reputation laundered and has been invited to the White House, you really have to understand the heart of U.S. foreign policy and just how, in my opinion, disgusting it tends to be. Okay, so let me walk you through it. Now, one of my favorite sources for foreign policy-related news is actually a Substack account called The Dissident, and they do a really good job putting anything that's currently happening in the proper historical context. So I highly recommend everyone check out this piece. It's titled Al-Qaeda Goes to Washington. Trump met with current Syrian president and former Al-Qaeda leader Ahmed al-Sharaa. He used to be known as al-Jawlani back in his so-called terrorist days. Now, I am unwilling to be as friendly as our government is in regard to forgiving this man and his past, because if you guys can recall, the terrorist group that carried out the worst terror attack on U.S. soil, killing thousands of our people, was al-Qaeda. So he claims that he wasn't part of al-Qaeda at the time 9/11 happened, but he joined al-Qaeda after 9/11 happened, which I think is just as bad, right? You see that horrific terror attack and you're
maybe worse.
Maybe worse, right?
Because you actively signed up for it. You knew what they were, and now you sign up.
Exactly. So let's go through the story of al-Shara. Now, before al-Shara overthrew and replaced Bashar al-Assad as the leader of Syria, he did go by Mohammed al-Jilani and led what is known as the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, which is an offshoot of Syria's al-Qaeda branch, al-Nusra. Now, the U.S. Embassy in Syria, had put out a poster showing al-Shara's face, and it read, "Stop this terrorist," adding up to $10 million reward for anyone who can turn him in. So, like, he was so wanted by our government that there was a $10 million bounty on his head. And just a few weeks ago, here he is playing basketball with members of our military at the White House. Okay, so take a look at this. It just, I don't know how people aren't up in arms about this, because I certainly am. And at the White House, President Trump even went so far as to compliment al-Shara generously, if you ask me. Let's take a quick look at that video.
Agreement with him. He's a very strong leader. He comes from a very tough place, and he's a tough guy. I liked him. I get along with him. The new president of Syria. And we'll do everything we can to make Syria successful, because that's part of the Middle East. We have peace now in the Middle East, first time that anyone can remember that ever happening.
That's not true. There isn't peace in the Middle East. Currently, there's an ongoing war between Israel and Lebanon, Israel and the West Bank. I mean, the list goes on and on. Sure, the level of airstrikes and bombings and slaughter in the Gaza Strip has slowed down, but it hasn't stopped entirely. But that's beside the point. Let me continue with some more examples of what's been going on with this al-Shara guy. So Trump also, by the way, glazed al-Shara while he was on Air Force One earlier. That's what you're about to watch in this next clip. Take a look.
How did you find the Syrian president?
Right. I think very good. Young, attractive guy, tough guy. You know, strong pass. Very strong pass fighter.
Does that worry you at all?
He's got a real shot at pulling it together.
Okay. Good-looking guy, very strong guy. I mean,
Central
again,
casting.
Wait, I don't understand why this is the same party that is saying that Zohran Mamdani is bad.
Is a
Did nothing-
jihadist terrorist,
Right, but
yes.
this guy, Zohran...
who's an actual terrorist,
right,
is invited to the White House.
Zohran, by the way, is my age, had nothing to do with 9/11.
Nothing to do with
His family had nothing to do with 9/11. This guy is part of an organization that is behind 9/11, who actually had something to do with 9/11, but somehow he's not a terrorist?
Well,
Make that make sense.
I'll explain how this all came about. Now, Zohran Mamdani, sure, I think it's totally fair to criticize his proposals and his policies. No indication at all that he's a jihadist or an Islamist at all. But Jilani certainly was a jihadist, was an extremist, and killed a ton of innocent people as a member of an al-Qaeda offshoot. Now, when he was in the White House, Trump also didn't miss an opportunity to hack some of his merch, including his cologne. Let's take a quick look at that, and then I'll give you the actual history of how we got to this moment and why it's so problematic.
This is men's fragrance.
Look at this guy. Look at him just like spraying people with this cologne. It's amazing.
I thought it was AI at first.
Me too. I thought it was a
I-
big
I-
video.
I-
You gotta watch the best part where he says, "I don't know with you people." Remember?
Okay.
Watch.
So what we'll do is just take that, Joe, put it in, and then the other one is for your wife. How many wives?
How many wives? One. Now, look, I don't really care about
that was actually pretty
insulting.
good.
Yeah, but we cut off the part where he's like, "I don't know with you people."
I know. Look, I don't care about insulting al-Shara because he's a terrible person who should never be allowed to step foot on U.S. soil.
Let alone the White House.
Prior to visiting the White House, he was also in New York City for the UN General Assembly, which is like doubly insulting considering, again, the worst terror attack in U.S. history happened in New York City. Okay, so how is it that all of a sudden this so-called former terrorist is being invited to the White House and is being treated so nicely? Well, in order to understand that, you have to understand the U.S. involvement in the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So the truth is that despite 9/11 was supposedly carried out by al-Qaeda terrorists, the United States armed al-Qaeda terrorists in Syria in an effort to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. Now, why would they care? Why would they want to do that? Well, Bashar al-Assad was an ally of Iran. And so there was an interest by both Israel and the United States to oust him and essentially replace him with someone who isn't so friendly with Iran, okay? So this is an excerpt from journalist Seth Harp's book. It's titled The Fort Bragg Cartel, and it's telling. He writes, Washington's efforts to overthrow Assad, who, like Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi, was an outspoken and belligerent foe of Israel, redoubled amid the Arab Spring protests. One of the most expensive CIA programs in history, a billion-dollar fiasco codenamed Timber Sycamore, plowed thousands of tons of guns and ammo fresh from German and American factories into Syria in an effort to arm the Sunni portion of the population that had long chafed at the brutal and corrupt rule of the House of Assad. Arms traffickers working for the CIA also shipped stockpiles of seized weapons and munitions from the Libyan port of Benghazi to Syria, pouring accelerant onto the flames of a spreading civil war. In fact, back in 2012, the United States actively blocked a peace deal that would have ended the civil war in Syria. In fact, Jeffrey Sachs, who would negotiate peace deals on behalf of the UN and all of that, he said that the U.S. was the only country who stood in the way of securing that peace deal. According to Jeffrey Sachs, the reason why they did that was because all they cared about, all the U.S. government cared about, was ousting Bashar al-Assad. And mind you, this is 2012. This is under the Obama administration. So, guys, I want to be clear with the audience. This is not a partisan issue. Whether it's a Democratic administration or a Republican administration, there is continuity as it pertains to U.S. foreign policy, okay? So let's keep going. So 500,000 people, by the way, 500,000 people died as a result of not securing that peace deal. So after that failed peace deal because of the United States, hundreds of thousands of innocent people died. Now, when it became clear that the weapons that the United States was pumping into Syria were ending up in the hands of al-Qaeda terrorists, there were some communications, and we now have access to those communications thanks to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And here's what we found out. An internal email on WikiLeaks written by then advisor to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Jake Sullivan, bluntly states, al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. So who cares that al-Qaeda killed thousands of our own people and dragged us into a devastating war in the Middle East? When it comes to Syria and the ouster of Bashar al-Assad, the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad, al-Qaeda's on our side. Which is why, honestly, it's unsurprising that when al-Shara was in the United States, he didn't just visit Trump in the White House. He visited someone else. Let's take a look at this post. Ahmed al-Shara posing with former IDF soldier, U.S. Congressman Brian Mast.
Of course.
Who should be ousted himself, considering the fact that he walks the halls of Congress wearing the uniform of a foreign military. So that's really what this story is about. And I'm going to end on one more thing, and that's Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking the truth about this whole situation in a way that I wish every member of Congress would. Take a look.
This past Monday, on the Marines' 250th anniversary, when he honored the new Syrian president, who is an al-Qaeda terrorist and was wanted by our government for years with a $10 million bounty, up until March of this year. I very much am against that. I think that was very hurtful to the great men and women who served over in the Middle East and were sent there, and many of them that were killed and injured and live with PTSD to this day from fighting al-Qaeda. So there's things I disagree with, and I'm allowed to do so.
And she's referring to her disagreement with Trump hosting al-Shara in the White House. I agree with her on that. And let's not forget, al-Shara wasn't just in Syria. He was in Iraq fighting American soldiers on the ground in Iraq, carrying out terrorist attacks in Iraq. I'm not willing to just willy-nilly forgive him and say that it's a good thing that the Trump White House is currently negotiating various business deals with al-Shara between Syria and Israel. Okay, that's what this is about. It's insane. He also lifted sanctions against Syria as a result of this meeting at the White House.
Yeah, we are nearly a quarter of a century past 9/11, and I just want to say that I still do not forgive the architects of 9/11.
I agree.
And we went after the wrong people, obviously, but we're not here to litigate that today. I do want to take a step back and contextualize this, it isn't just this terrorist, it's also Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. Why are we laundering his reputation when we know that he murdered Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist from the Washington Post who was a legal American resident? We know that he had him butchered and dismembered. And yet we are now doing business deals with him. We are now friends with Saudi Arabia. They are not our friends.
Well, I mean, Jared Kushner got quite a
$2 billion
infusion from Saudi Arabia.
Not only that, Saudi Arabia now owns water rights in Arizona. Why is that happening?
That's crazy.
No foreign country should be owning our natural resources.
Well, here's my thing on Jelani. And I absolutely refuse to go along with the rebrand because, and even calling him al-Shara, that's what it is, right? It's whitewashing this terrorist. So I still refer to him as al-Jelani. I agree with you, and I think really you could sum it up. It was something you said in the beginning of this segment, Anna. This really exposes how hollow American foreign policy is. You can't take a terrorist, put him in a nice suit, give him a basketball and photo ops, and put him in the White House and pretend it's a good thing. This is insane.
It also, when I talk about the continuity in foreign policy, I'm also referring to the fact that the United States has had a long history of arming terrorist groups.
ISIS.
When they think that it's beneficial for either our purposes or a foreign government that we're allied with for their purposes. And by the way, right now as we speak, and I want to kind of put this on everyone's radar because it's important to know about it. Right now in Gaza, there is a militant group. I think they're a terror group because they were also the ones who admitted to looting the humanitarian aid that was coming into the Strip. It's led by a man by the name of Abu Shabab that Israel and the United States have confessed to arming in order to fight ISIS. Not ISIS, I'm sorry, Hamas. Get ready because somewhere down the line, we're going to hear about how, the U.S. military or the U.S. taxpayer has to aid and abet Israel in fighting Abu Shabab and the terrorist group he leads.
Which is how we got here anyway with Hamas,
with
right?
Hamas, exactly.
I was on a network. It was an evangelical Christian network. It was my first time on there. I've not been back, ironically. I brought up the fact that Hamas was initially, received funding from Israel. They cut my feed.
I'm not surprised.
That is the part that they want to whitewash about this, okay?
Yeah,
you might not, we're not pro-Hamas, right? We're not pro-Hamas. They do terrible things, but we can't ignore what we've done. It's just like we did with ISIS.
Isn't it pro-Hamas when you're funding Hamas? And isn't it pro-Hamas when you silence people who draw attention to the fact that Israel facilitated the funding of Hamas?
And here's what always ends up happening. When we fund these kind of rebels and these people, it's the Christians in the Middle East who bear the brunt.
Yeah, and Israel bombed Christian churches and nothing was said. We just kind of shoved that under the rug.
And not only that, Alawites and Christians in Syria and Druze, what they're facing as a result of al-Jelani now being the leader of that country is absolutely devastating.
Yeah, I also just want to point out that we have had an unfortunate habit of intervening across the world. And it's not just the Middle East, it's also South America. I mean, Bay of Pigs, anyone remember that? This happened, we just never learn. The CIA has had a legacy of ashes. We make the same mistake over and over again. We think that regime change will serve American interests, but each and every time we end up shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, and we also stick around to nation build, right? Which never ever goes very
Remember
well.
when W told us that we would be greeted like liberators in Iraq and Afghanistan. Yeah, so much for that. They hated us, right?
And what it leads to is, and I've said this before on the show, I'm going to say it again, it does lead to these mass migrations. It leads to refugee crises. And what's really fascinating is the very countries that create all this instability in this region of the world in particular don't absorb the consequences of that the same way other countries do. Now, in the case of mass migration and refugee crises, as we know, the war in Syria, the civil war in Syria led to a ton of Syrians leaving. Some tried to come here, but obviously we were far more restrictive in accepting Syrian refugees. But a lot of them went to the UK. A lot of them went to European countries. A lot of them went to Turkey. And so our actions, or the actions of our government, has worldwide global consequences. And it's important to know that. And so the next time you hear some American politician or media pundit say, oh, this group or that group hate us for our freedom, just know that they're lying to you. They hate us because we probably destroyed their country and then pretended like we were the good guys who were spreading democracy when it was anything but.
That's a really interesting point. Thank you for bringing that up, because it's also the same people who complain about illegal immigration.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually an opponent of illegal immigration, but I'm consistent in that I'm also America first.
Right.
But these same neoconservatives, they say, oh, illegal aliens are bad, let's deport them all. But they're also saying, let's bomb the heck out of South America, Venezuela now.
Yeah.
And by the way, Venezuela is another powder keg.
And I know you all have and I understand it, right? Because we hate regime change, especially if you're America first. We're allergic to the phrase regime change. Venezuela is a very interesting situation, and here's what I think. I think the administration is not doing a very good job in explaining why the president has put assets down there, and there's probably more than you even know.
Not just assets, the world's biggest aircraft carrier, Gerald Ford, is now down there.
And it's kind of a four-pronged situation down there, right? We know about Tren de Aragua. People are aware of it because they took over buildings in Chicago, in Colorado, and we did get some public awareness of that operation. It's not just a gang, okay? Tren de Aragua is actually a paramilitary force that is, yes, it's aligned with the cartels, but you have to understand the Venezuelan regime and the Cartel del Sol are essentially the same thing. We're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar operation. They have more money than most countries. And they've not just been involved in, say, sending these destabilizers to our country, Tren de Aragua. There's a counterintelligence aspect to this. They, with the Cubans, have turned many high-profile officials here in the United States.
Really?
Yes. And that has not gotten enough attention and not coming out. And again, I blame the administration for that, because of course we're not going to be for regime change.
Well, I want to see.
From my point of view, it looks like. Go ahead, Anna.
Sorry to interrupt you. Like, what I want to see is, number one, evidence of the claims that the Trump administration is making, because they're making all sorts of claims, and depending on which day they're talking about it, you'll hear a different excuse for why they're doing what they're doing with Venezuela. Oh, we're worried about the drug trafficking, so we're just, striking random fishing boats.
I think the drug trafficking is actually the least worrisome
part
of this. In
because
all
the
honesty,
fentanyl is not coming from Venezuela.
They can take that land routes. It comes up through Colombia. You're going to take it through
it's coming
Guatemala.
from Mexico. It's coming from
Mexico.
Yeah.
So that's even...
The drug thing is totally made up.
I agree with you there.
That is made up. The thing is, the Trump administration, in the first term, tried on 2 different occasions to overthrow Maduro and replace him with a puppet leader by the name of, what was his name?
Juan Guaido.
Juan Guaido, exactly. There we go. And, the Trump administration failed in that effort. I don't know what's going on here, because Maduro, if it's about oil, Maduro even told Trump, look, I don't want to go to war. So if you want access to the oil, I'll give you access to the oil. I'll give you everything. And Trump's like, not good enough. I'm still going to keep,
I really think, and I used this phrase before, I think this is giving Bush.
No, totally.
No. You know why, though? Because Bush 1 wasn't able to finish the job in the Middle East, so the son had to come and do the job for him. And I think President Trump feels a sense of obligation from his first term, because Juan Guaido, that was an abysmal failure. He invested so much political capital on trying to get the guy installed, but he wasn't able to.
Right.
And yes...
And Guaido, I'm not for, regime change and installing opposition leaders, but he was also a terrible one.
He was,
Actually, the Venezuelan people
didn't want him.
They did not like him.
Right.
That was a CIA guy, basically, right? That's who our CIA wanted.
Right.
And we're facing the same situation now, so this could go really wrong, and you should worry about that.
I'm going to bring this back to domestic politics and probably also to what our audience cares about. Why should the American people give a flying blank about this? And let me tell you why. Because American people right now are hungry for America First policies. We don't care about Venezuela, with all due respect. We care about grocery prices and Thanksgiving dinner. We don't want to be spending billions of dollars trying to, topple a regime or sable rattle down there. We just don't.
I would care if there's evidence that Venezuela is actually causing Americans harm on U.S. soil,
Yes.
And you're right in that the Trump administration has done a terrible job explaining what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how it benefits the American people. And so I guess this saga is going to continue, but make no mistake about it, the military assets continue to be accumulated off the coast of Venezuela. And now you hear Maduro essentially mobilizing his military in preparation for war. And I really, really hope it doesn't get to that point.
Yeah, this might be a good time to switch to also the domestic ramifications of foreign policy and the impacts on the 2028 race. But one last thing to the point that you just brought up, which I think was really important, is that the military-industrial complex is always hungering for another conflict.
Right.
And now that Ukraine isn't so much on their radar, there's actually a huge update on that. There's now a corruption scandal under Zelensky.
As there should be.
Yeah.
As there's $100 million missing.
Exactly.
Come on, man.
And like, you're either stupid or you're ignorant. Like, pick one, you know? You're either complicit or you're stupid. So
I totally agree with you on that. I would just say I've been briefed on this a lot. So I come at it from a different perspective. I don't believe this one is actually driven by the military-industrial complex. Trump really feels he has a bone to pick with Maduro. Where I see the real threat here, particularly, it is a dicey gamble to make because you do have the CIA at play here, right? And they don't want a true opposition leader. They want a guy that is CIA, that is
a puppet.
Maduro light.
Right.
Right? They can say, oh, we ousted Maduro, we got something better, but they still control him, right? So you kind of see, even with this situation, Trump going up against his own intelligence community as he continues to do on a daily basis.
That's really interesting. I mean, I don't share that.
And that's dangerous, right? If we do just then get what would then essentially be a Bush-era policy, and we don't get real change. And paired up with this military action, which is going to be more like a black ops action from what I hear. It's not really going to be a military campaign like the Middle East. It's a black ops operation, which can be very bad too.
Of course.
Right, Anna? You know those well?
Yep. I have one question for you before we move on, because I am curious what you think. So out of nowhere, and I'm going to just put my cards on the table and say, in regard to this Venezuela story, I was like, oh, finally there's a foreign policy story that we can talk about that has nothing to do with Israel. And then,
it does.
And then all of a sudden, Senator Lindsey Graham in an interview.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. He tied it to Israel.
Yeah, he did tie it to Israel. And now I'm like, wait a minute, is Israel involved in this? Because he said that Maduro supports Hezbollah, which is why we need to get in there. And I'm like, number one, is that true? Number two, even if that were the case, which I'm not buying, but even if that were the case, so what? I mean, Hezbollah is not a threat to U.S. national security at all.
Well, there has been Hezbollah cells in Venezuela for a long time. They're very friendly with them there. But that is not the Trump administration's perspective on why do an operation in Venezuela. Now, Lindsey Graham, that's totally right up his alley, right? But he never saw a war he didn't love.
Exactly. He's never seen a country he didn't want to bomb, so I don't really care what Lindsey Graham has to say. Yeah.
All right, why don't we move on to the
I think
election?
This is a good opportunity. There's a lot going down right now. You know, after each election day, the next one is, on everyone's radar. People start campaigning on November 6th. It never stops. We call it the perpetual campaign. And right now, people are already jockeying to be the nominees for both parties, for both the Democrats and the Republicans. Right now, MAGA is at war. Okay, I'm not going to mince any words. Right now, the party is going at each other over a number of issues, including Israel, including the Epstein files, including America First, what MAGA actually means. We have Tucker Carlson. Well, his name isn't officially,
There's no indication that he plans to run.
There's no indication, but I frankly think he would be a fantastic candidate. But Tucker Carlson has found an enemy in a guy named Ted Cruz that everybody knows. Everyone's favorite senator, of course, who shut down the government in 2013 over health care. That was his initial claim to fame. He is now trying to reprise his campaign from back in the day and setting himself up to be the very opposite, the very arch nemesis of Tucker Carlson, by which I mean he wants to be interventionist. He wants to engage in regime change wars. He wants to involve the United States in the Middle East. And he's saying that he wants to put Israel first. which is very interesting.
Is he really planning to run in 2028 on that message in
Ted
particular?
Cruz.
Absolutely.
I don't.
Good luck.
He's saying it.
I don't think
This
Ted Cruz
isn't me
can run.
interpreting what.
I don't either. And
I think for various reasons that he had to leave the initial race in 2016 that he ran for president. I would be very surprised if Ted Cruz is running.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he ran because these are entitled, out-of-touch politicians. But think about what Ted Cruz represents to the American voter these days, right? I mean, he's the one who went on Tucker Carlson's show and said, I was elected to be the #1 representative of Israel. Why do you think that's a popular message in the U.S. where Americans are struggling and actually need representation?
Also, in 2022, this is the same dude who fled to Cancun, the Ritz-Carlton Cancun, no less, in the middle of a snowstorm that claimed the lives of hundreds of Americans in Texas.
Yep.
They completely lost power over huge portions of the state, and he decides to basically get out of town, and that's not even the end of it. He leaves his dog at home with no one to care for the dog.
Oh my God.
Do you remember that?
I actually didn't know that part of the story.
I didn't either.
By the way, this is a cherry on top. He blamed it on his
amazing.
daughters, who, by the way, were also teenagers at the time. He said, my daughters told me to go, leave the country.
Yeah, I remember.
This is the United States senator of one of the biggest states of the union, engaging a dereliction of duty at a time when his people really needed him. He wants to be the president of the United States? Yeah, I don't think so.
I think he's going to be a non-issue in terms of like competition for the Republican field. But what I am kind of curious about is, do you ladies think that Thomas Massie might consider running?
I for sure think he will. Remember, I slipped into your DMs, Anna.
I remember.
I did, and I said, I sent you what Thomas Massie tweeted the other day. He said, people should look towards a post-Trump landscape because these Republicans who are saying they don't want to see the Epstein files disclosed, they are going to be on the record for defending pedophiles. Do they really want that?
I mean, can we say we're in post-Trump yet, even in 2028? Because you got Bannon being the prime mover, Steve Bannon, saying that Trump should have another term and run in 2028. And I know it sounds crazy, right? But do you want to know why he's out there saying this?
Because,
no, why?
Well, I can tell you why. Because yesterday on the stage, he's like, if Trump doesn't win, I'm going to be in jail.
That's it. Yes.
He said that out loud?
He said that out loud.
Arctic Frost is the driver behind 2028. So you better believe they're actually exploring this. And you want to know why they think they can do it. This is what I'm told from an insider. They believe they have one constitutional attorney who can poke holes in the 2022 Amendment.
So what they're saying is it's
I don't
not
actually
too,
think it's Dr. Eastman,
but the argument is that because it's not 2 consecutive terms, he can run again. And
or that is something with his age too.
Well, also,
he's like 80 years old. Listen, if he really tries it, I'd like to believe that Republicans in this country wouldn't stand for it.
They will stand for it.
That's crazy. That's insane.
I think most people hats.
Well, that could go both ways, though. Like,
so I don't really put much stock into that.
But look, no, here, the thing is, he does know that Democrats are going to throw him in jail as soon as they can after this term. Because they're already building indictments.
I think Democrats have learned a very valuable lesson.
You would think?
No, but seriously, it backfired. It backfired tremendously that they went after him through the courts.
But they don't
legally.
really learn.
But
they might,
Republicans don't learn.
But by the way, the Georgia case that we talked about earlier on earlier episodes, it's now revving back up. The judge that threw Fani Willis off the case has now appointed himself. I kid you not. He is now leading the case. The case is now experiencing a resurgence.
I just want to get past the Trump era, so badly.
We're not going to, though,
because I'm so sick of, the constant concerns about whether or not democracy is going to be subverted or elections are going to be stolen. I'm tired of the chaos, and I'm tired of the, excuse my language, I'm not going to curse. I'm tired of the BS about how, America first, and I'm going to take care of the American people. None of that is actually happening. Like, we as American voters should have much higher standards and hold members of both parties accountable for all the BS they spew and how they just use their positions of power to enrich themselves, which is what Trump has done in his second term. Let's be honest about that. Through his crypto schemes, through his foreign business deals, what has he done for the American people other than secure the border? That's the one thing he said he would do, and he actually followed through on that promise. Other than that, what has he done to make the lives of Americans better?
I can think of
got
one
cheaper
thing.
Ozempic.
Yeah, we did actually.
I know you really wanted that, Anna.
I was dying for it.
I know, I could tell.
Like, this whole thing about a third term should infuriate everybody. I would be furious
Also,
if he were a Democrat, hinting that he's going to try to do.
Right. I also think there's a political advantage for him to pretend to want to run for a third term because the lame duck disadvantage is huge. Like, once people know that you're out the door, they stop taking you seriously. But I do want to actually didn't even finish presenting the segment because we got so heated. No, I absolutely love it. But I also want to cover the other side. So we have the MAGA versus the MIGA arm of the GOP, but we also have Gavin Newsom. Where do we even start with him? I got to show this tweet from his very robust social media account. I hate giving Gavin Newsom any sort of credit, but his social media game has been kind of funny in recent days. It has been funny. We can't not admit that. He tweeted this out right after the Epstein files started. By the way, the Epstein files that have come out so far are not the Epstein files that people think of. It's actually emails from the estate itself.
Right.
The Epstein files themselves have not yet been released. The emails that have been trickling out were from the Epstein family. But Gavin Newsom has taken all the oxygen out of the room when it comes to the Democratic nomination. Other candidates like Josh Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer, Pete Buttigieg are essentially sidelined and just tangential at this point. Gavin Newsom is for sure the front runner, whether or not we like it. And he's been running for this for, I think, the past decade, if not more. He probably was born thinking that he had a birthright to be the United States president.
That's great. I mean, maybe he can turn the entire country into one massive homeless encampment. Steal taxpayer money while he does it. I have no love for Gavin Newsom. In fact, like, the fact that he is now considered prematurely the front runner for the Democratic ticket makes me sick to my stomach. His leadership in California has been a failure. He has screwed over fire victims in my state. He has abandoned them and bailed out the very utility company, PG&E, Pacific Electric and Gas, which sparked one of the worst fires in California's history, wiped out an entire community, Paradise, California. I wish people looked beyond the superficial nonsense, the slicked back hair, and the so-called good looks, and actually looked a little harder at what his leadership looked like in the state of California, because it's been a complete and utter nightmare.
Yeah, and I don't think he's a front runner because he's so awesome. I think he's a front runner because everybody else is so shitty.
No,
It's excellence by contrast.
Well, and also, look, they floated this for the 2024 election because they realized they had a problem early on, particularly the tech CEOs. And some of it was just, they realized that Biden was out to lunch because it was obvious no matter what the media told you. But also, you got to remember the Biden, or maybe a lot of people didn't know this, the Biden administration was actually looking at controlling AI with the government, not letting it be privatized, right? So they were very upset about it. And they actually met in Tahoe in 2022, met with both Biden and Newsom. They basically tried to talk Biden. I had a friend who was working as a consultant on this. They tried to talk Biden into dropping out then. They were going to shift Kamala Harris and try to get her to go back into the Senate in Feinstein's seat. And then Newsom, though he is pretty savvy, right? He's politically savvy. He realized this was a bad deal.
Used car salesman,
this was going to hurt his chances in the future, and he would just sit this one out, which was smart for him. So he is he's a terrible governor. He's a terrible leader. He doesn't care about people at all. But he is politically savvy, so I do see him as the front runner. And I know we're going to talk about some other things, and I'll tell you why I think he's the front runner as well. Because obviously the Trump team and the Trump administration thinks he's the front runner, right? Because they've been a little focused on him. But I don't think we're finished with the Republican ticket just yet, because we don't have an heir apparent, right?
Well,
you said you want the Trump era to be over, but it's not
the MAGA heir
Ted Cruz.
apparent, it's J.D. Vance.
I mean,
Trump doesn't want him to be.
what?
Trump does not want
No
JD.
way. No way.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Why do you
I
say
am
that?
telling you, I am hearing from inside he does not want it to be JD Vance.
Well, neither
You know
do
who
I,
else?
by the way.
I know
Wait,
you said
tell us
everything goes
why.
back to Israel. And, we were hoping there's stories that don't go back to Israel. The Israel First lobby doesn't want JD Vance. So what you're seeing with Tucker, he's very aligned with JD. He consults him a lot.
Which
They're
is why I kinda
very
like JD.
close, right? So this attack on Tucker Carlson is really more of a proxy for JD Vance.
No way.
Yes, and remember now they're highlighting that Tucker's son. Buckley works in JD Vance's office.
And JD tweeted in defense of him.
Yes, JD tweeted in defense of him, which he would. That's how JD is. But also, people really misinterpreted Signalgate. Remember Signalgate? And they thought it was to take out Secretary Hegseth or the
It
National
was
Security
actually
Advisor.
targeted towards JD.
It was targeted towards JD because JD
was the only
more
one who
hesitant.
pushed back against, doing these like strikes in the Middle East. But it's so, here's the thing. I think everything is a psyop at this point, right? So I'm always very careful about falling for the cover story because the fact of the matter is JD Vance is a creation of Peter Thiel, who's a hardcore Zionist. So I have a hard time believing that JD Vance, who wouldn't have the career that he has now if it weren't for Peter Thiel, is suddenly like,
Maybe this is a pyramid of concerns for Peter Thiel. Maybe he cares about Palantir and his money more than the Zionism, which is my guess,
maybe, we'll
Because
see.
right now, I think his primary goal is to make a boatload of money.
How much money do you need, man? I think you're right. I think
Obviously,
you're right
it's
about that.
never enough.
It's never enough. Yeah.
I mean, right now, Elon is asking his shareholders for $1 trillion as a pay package. I'm not making that up. They just passed that. They voted in favor of a $1 trillion pay package.
Well, he's
and
got a lot
Elon
of
said,
kids,
this is
so-
Elon's response. It's not about the money.
Right. I'm sure it's not.
But I also think you talk about tech billionaires and Biden. Their biggest mistake was actually banning Elon from the Biden White House, I think that ruined it for them because that spurred Elon to buy X, and the rest is history.
It did definitely help. It definitely helped. And again, the wanting to regulate AI, and of course they saw their chances better with Donald Trump, and it has been better. I mean, look, other things we didn't get that we didn't want it is this push for AI.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I know that doesn't sit well with President Trump's base at all. And we have some correspondence with Lindy TV, and they've asked them repeatedly about the push for artificial intelligence. And so obviously President Trump knows that the tech bros wanted him for that.
Is there any response from the White House to those emails, to those questions?
Yeah, it's always China. We're in a race with China. So would we not rather own it than China? Okay, I understand that.
Then why are
To
we
a certain
bringing in 600,000 Chinese
Exactly.
students who could steal intellectual property and then go back to China? I don't understand.
Well, this is such a departure from his first term foreign policy, right? Because when we're talking about foreign policy, we could say that was probably one of the greater achievements of his first term foreign policy.
Imposing those tariffs. His tariffs against
targeted
China were
tariffs,
so
and
good.
helping the public. And they did a great job on educating the public then, right?
Also,
on the
his
threat of
tariffs against China were so effective that Trade Representative Catherine Tai of the Biden administration decided to continue
They
them.
kept them.
and expand upon them. But again, those were targeted tariffs that made sense.
I actually really liked Trump's first term foreign policy. And I wish he had kept to that.
We all did.
Well, there were definitely some major flaws.
It wasn't perfect, but it was much more sane.
He ripped up the JCPOA, which was
and left the Paris Climate Agreement, or tried to leave the Paris Climate
there were
Agreement,
definitely
but-
some huge
Well,
downsides.
and it was
Tried to do a regime
departure
change in
from the
Venezuela.
whole administrative state foreign policy. So you have to commend him on that, right? Because anytime anyone comes in, it's the same foreign policy. It doesn't matter if
Exactly.
it's a Democrat or a Republican.
It was slightly different.
Slightly.
A little
He did-
interruption in the
nobody's even
continuity.
different, so-
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's segue into also a Gavin Newsom topic, unfortunately or fortunately. It's the revocation of 17,000 driver's licenses given to foreign truck drivers. And before you give Gavin Newsom any credit for this, I want to remind you that the Trump administration threatened to withhold $120 million in funding. Gavin Newsom didn't just wake up one day and decide to do the right thing. His hand was forced. Surprise, surprise. All right, so Connor, let's play the video of the guy wildly driving a truck and then killing 3 Americans. The video that went around the world.
Is he driving a big rig?
Yeah.
It's a commercial vehicle.
Okay. After he murdered 3 people through his reckless driving, you know what his excuse was? He couldn't read the signs. He couldn't read it.
Why does he have a driver's license, a commercial driver's license to begin with? I don't understand.
That's the huge problem.
Do we not have American
California.
commercial drivers? Like, we don't have truckers here?
It's just so obscene. Well, first of all, it's obscene that we're hiring foreigners over Americans, number one. And number two, it's obscene that Gavin Newsom's administration didn't enforce language requirements. At the very least, people who get CDLs should be able to speak and read our language, like basic English, like left to right, stop, don't, you know?
I mean, if you've ever been to a California DMV, you can kind of believe it.
Is it all Spanish?
No, it's just a nightmare.
It's a nightmare, and they do hand out license like crazy. And I did know some scams running on illegal
yes,
immigrant license schemes back in the day.
Emerald, you bring up a really good point, because in my preparation for this, I found a DMV employee who got paid $3,000 per illegal alien on whose behalf she took commercial driver's license tests.
What is
she was running a scam out of that DMV. I don't know what the hell is going on in California, but if Gavin Newsom thinks for 1 second that we're going to let him become the president of the United States, yeah, sure.
Well, look, it all depends on how the election plays out. Sometimes attack lines that you think will be effective against a candidate don't end up being effective at all. But the point I want to make in regard to the 2028 presidential election, where Gavin Newsom is certainly going to run, is that he is such a target-rich environment. There are so many lines of attack. And I think that the Democratic establishment that's really propping him up and setting him up to be the front runner for the election are totally in the dark about all of the various things that he has done wrong as the governor of California, including the story that we're currently talking about. Now, I don't know what's on the screen right now, but I need an answer about it.
It's a video.
Okay. Is that the driver's nails?
No. That's the DMV employee who was running a scam out of the DMV. She was taking, Connor, if we want to play the video, she was taking these tests under different disguises. So she would wear something different each time she took a test and pretend to be the person on whose behalf she was taking the test.
Has she been arrested? Let's watch it.
Jamie Middleton took commercial driver's license, or CDL, written exams for 7 different people. Investigators say that each time she'd use disguises, sunglasses, and surgical masks to look like a different person taking the exam.
For the right price,
workers would have on their computers a photo of the person who was supposed to take the test, but they'd let Middleton, who's clearly not the person on the computer screen, take it instead. She'd split a $1,500 to $3,000 payment for each bogus test with accomplices in the DMV.
So this is in New York State, not California.
Well, the CDL situation was in California.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing.
I think that probably happens in California. I don't know if they go full disguise, but I know there were schemes to provide documentation that was false, and you'd have your person in the DMV, and they would give them money under the table, and they just issue the driver's license.
I mean, there are stricter rules in like ID verification for like the SATs. Like, what is this?
That's true.
It is harder to get birth control than to. This is just like absolutely obscene that this happens out in the open, and also, if you notice, in Democratic states. These sanctuary cities are ripe for this sort of behavior, and we need to crack down.
But the fact that the Trump administration is addressing it, right? They threatened to pull $100 million in funding from California. Yeah, that tells you that Newsom is the front runner in their mind. And also, didn't they just, another related to Gavin Newsom, the feds arrested his former chief of staff.
We just covered that in the previous episode.
Yes.
And you know what's a huge tell? Gavin Newsom has been gearing up for this run for, as I said, the past decade.
Yeah.
When I was on the National Finance Committee of the DNC, he would come hat in hand essentially every single time. He and Pete Buttigieg would just work the room table to table trying to gather up all the donors. And I could just tell that this guy, he cares about nothing but himself, his own political preservation and ascent. And do you remember what, I obviously have a huge bone to pick with Kamala Harris, but I do love that she called him out in her book. When she called Gavin Newsom for his endorsement when she was running, you know what he said?
What did he say?
Sorry, I'm on a hike. Call you back.
He's a slimy person. He just is.
He never called her back. I mean,
So I guess my question is, Anna, you don't think that, you think he's too vulnerable because there's a lot to attack him on. But who
I think he's going to be vulnerable in the general. I think in the primary, if he wins and is the top of the Democratic ticket, the Democrats who support him are going to be shocked at how effective the line of attack against him is going to be by whoever the Republican ends up being, the Republican nominee.
So, Lindy, who do you think it would be if it's not Gavin Newsom? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
The establishment right now is already revolving around Gavin Newsom, so there isn't anybody else. I have to. This is how the DNC works. No, I was saying this earlier.
I'd be shocked if she ran. I think she's going to run for Chuck Schumer's seat.
Yeah,
absolutely. The DNC is such a clique. I'm just trying to tell you, it's so insular. So once they decide on a candidate, that's it. That's why they tried to squeeze Bernie Sanders out in 2016. He never had a chance. The whole thing was rigged against him. Okay, so there isn't going to be any opposition to Gavin Newsom because that's not how Democrats work. There's no such thing as a democracy. If you're not their anointed person, you don't have a chance at all. And it's not just at the presidential level, it's every single level. That's why independent and upstart candidates have such a hard time breaking into the system.
I've never asked you this, even though you're a great resource to get confirmation. In 2016, obviously, the Democratic establishment had already decided that Hillary Clinton's going to be the nominee.
They hated Bernie.
So did they conspire against him?
They absolutely did. They marshaled all the superdelegates, and that's why they had to change the rules afterwards because the Bernie Sanders supporters called them out on it. They saw all the momentum, all the money, all the young people around America loving Bernie.
Yeah.
And they knew that they were done. And that's why they had to rig the game. Because
the party that protects democracy.
Exactly.
Right?
They do that every single time. In 2016, they screwed over Bernie in the name of democracy. In 2024, they lied about Biden's cognitive fitness in the name of democracy. They always screw up democracy in the name of democracy.
Well, then they talk the other candidates of dropping out, essentially, right?
Yep. That's what happened in 2020.
Exactly.
Lindy, I want to know what's going on with Pepsi. Okay.
Yeah, this is actually, I love our friend Humberto. He suggested this one, and this is really fascinating. A lot of companies are now caving into pressure from RFK Jr. and changing their products entirely. So PepsiCo is now making their products, some of their products without certain ingredients that are artificial. And this impacts both the Cheerios brand and the Doritos brand. So RFK Jr. has been on a kick about removing artificial dyes from the American diet, which I think is fantastic. I have some disagreements with him on vaccines, but I think this aspect is actually a really worthy goal. We should do everything we can to minimize the artificial and deleterious ingredients from the American food supply. I think that's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't she get on board with that?
I mean, I'm obviously in favor of doing something about all the various chemicals and ingredients that are used in like the processed foods that people buy. But I think that, you know, the obesity crisis in America runs a lot deeper than that, right?
It does, yeah.
I think it has to do with pharmaceutical drugs that are overprescribed. I would like to see him have a more robust, comprehensive approach to this. Great, the artificial dyes is a great place to start. I would actually like to see him do more, though.
Yeah, I think that's the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, I think right now his North Star, his only concern right now is basically dismantling vaccines. That's his only concern, and everything else is just tangential for him. I'm just trying to describe.
I'm the
his
outlier
mindset.
here. I want to see more of that.
Yeah.
I don't care as much about, which made me laugh when the producer sent topics and said, Pepsi gets naked with RFK Jr. I'm like, we could have some fun with that, considering Olivia Nuzzi's doing her press tour right now.
Is she's selling a book?
Yes.
Oh, thank God I didn't know about it. That woman, man.
Are you not going to have her on?
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't say this.
I have a little bit of a soft spot for her, which I've
known her for years too. I mean,
Yeah.
she was always kind to me when she was at the White House when a lot of people weren't in the White House press pool, right? She always made a point to come and say hello, and you know.
Is she selling a memoir on her time with RFK Jr.? That's hilarious.
I don't know if I'd go in that direction, to be honest with you. I think it's probably a mistake to do that, but whatever. Anyway.
I think it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back, I want to see, I'm a mom. I am very conscious about the foods that I give my children. I always have been. I was on the MAHA train before there was an official MAHA coalition. And that was something that I was always sort of different about me. Everyone knows I'm a Republican, you know. That was different about me and other conservatives. I always said I had a liberal diet. I loved living in Los Angeles when I did, and I could walk down the street to the end of the block and get my wheatgrass shot and my E3 Live and my cacao smoothie. And I implemented that when I had children. What also set me on the vaccine thing, though, is that when I had my child in 2016, my first child, my son, and within 24 hours, I had been passed out from a C-section, an emergency C-section. I was asleep. My husband was awake, thank goodness. The nurse comes in and starts to take my son to get a Hep B shot. And my husband, because he's kind of dry and funny, was like, I don't think he's going to be a sex worker or taking intravenous drugs anytime in the near future. Why is he getting a Hep B shot? And my husband wouldn't let them take him. And then they told us, well, within the 48 hours, it's recommended to do it. And he's like, but this is for prostitutes.
Yeah,
And
here's
so
where
it set me on this
agree.
whole thing. So I've been very hard on HHS about not doing what they have a mandate to do, we felt like, with the MAHA-MAGA coalition, and that is address the childhood vaccines.
No, in that particular case, I think you bring up a really good point. I think the vaccine schedule for like literal newborns is a little insane. And I think that there should be specific vaccines that are kind of pushed on parents that should be like voluntary. They make it seem like it's mandatory. And so I think parents have a lot more leeway than they realize. But I have a problem with the hospitals pushing for these vaccines that aren't
so
necessary.
bad.
Yeah, they do. They make it seem like...
And moms want to make sure they're doing the right thing for their kids, and they feel totally strong-armed.
Right.
They do you can't even imagine the pressure campaign. And then they just drop you from the pediatrician.
I know.
They drop you from the practice like you're a criminal.
Emerald, I'm actually hugely sympathetic to what you said. I actually agree with you on that. But I think it should be assessed on a case-by-case basis. For example, the MMR vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella, it's hugely effective.
And it's been around forever.
It's been around forever.
Yeah,
I gotta finish. And the reason why it's together is that these are very young kids, and it's more likely that you'll get them to take the shot if it's one shot rather than 3 individual ones. And that's why it's all together. I just want to explain why. And it's been proven to be efficacious. There's been no scientific evidence suggesting that it's not.
Yeah, there has. There's been, the problem with the studies is that they're not blind studies. You don't get just a saline complex, a saline shot to prove that you have a base, you have a control group. You don't have a real control group.
You have a study that says the MMR vaccine is ineffective?
Well, you don't have one that proves it's effective because you haven't had a true legit study where you have a control group that's not given a vaccine.
So a placebo or a vaccine.
Exactly.
Because doctors consider it unethical not to give them the vaccine, though, because then it would
We know they do, but you know the kind of money that is thrown at them from Big Pharma. And have you ever sat with a mother who knows that their child, after getting, say, the 12-month MMR or the 18-month, noticed their child had a fever, immediately started regressing? I have friends like that. And I had a mother just break down on me, and she hadn't told anyone else that's what she believed, but she felt comfortable telling me because of my stance on vaccines. She said her 12-month-old daughter at the time she never spoke again. She never tried to speak again. She had a fever and regressed. And we have not done the rigorous studies. If you get the data and you say, and it's a true controlled group and a true authentic study, then you could convince, and we need to move on and understand why the autism epidemic is happening.
I hear what
but we
you're saying.
haven't had that.
I'm probably as close as anyone can be given my political ideology to where you are, but I also want to point you to the huge measles outbreaks that have been spreading across the country in the age of RFK Jr., including in Texas, including in several other states. So I'm talking about this vaccine in particular. It's been proven to be efficacious. And in fact, in its absence, people are getting sick and people will potentially die. I'm just saying that you are totally right, completely agree with you and I used to work for Merck, and I'm sorry, I wish I didn't, but it also allowed me to see into the belly of the beast. You are spot on about the fact that they are funneling billions of dollars into our politicians, into advertising, but I'm talking about the MMR vaccine in particular. I do have concerns about the others. And I'm not one of those like jab-happy people. I am not.
Well, a lot of those cases, like the one in Texas, was misreported. It was the girl, there were questions about if it was actually the measles.
You think it was fake? It was fake news?
Well, I don't think it was fake news. I think it was reported in a way that made it seem like it was the measles and there was a huge outbreak when there wasn't. And RFK Jr. addressed that. I don't have the stats in front of me, but.
Well, his solution to these situations is just take more vitamin A?
Look, okay, real quick, let me just get this out. The point I wanted to make was there have been some studies showing a correlation, not necessarily causation, but showing a correlation in the increase of autism cases with the fact that people are having children way later in life, right? And so the longer you wait to have kids, you know, if you're a man, your swimmers might be a little whatever. Like, so I'm open to the studies that show like a direct connection. I think my biggest problem with how the Trump administration has handled the topic of autism is they keep pointing to things allegedly having a causal relationship to autism when the evidence isn't there, like Tylenol, right? Like, I actually think, you know, lowering the use of Tylenol is a good idea because it's really hard on your kidneys and it's not good for you to take it as much as Americans do take it. But there is no scientific evidence drawing a connection to autism.
Well, and I would agree with you there.
Yeah.
I think that was a disappointment that they did that because we wanted the truth. They had promised us the autism data and a report, and we didn't get that.
Right.
We got the Tylenol, and everyone is open to either way.
We did get a report, but it turned out to be AI generated. Remember that?
Oh, well, there was that.
What a disaster.
There's a lot of disasters at HHS, and we could spend a whole hour talking about what's going on at HHS.
But by the way, I do not envy how difficult it is to be a mother in today's society. I do think that the vaccine schedule for infants is way too aggressive. And look, the thing that sucks the most is how do you make the right decision for your kids? Like, we're not all experts on vaccines, and there's a lot of like information, misinformation, a bunch of crap out there. And anyway, I just want to say I have a lot of empathy for what it's like to be a mother.
That we're having a conversation about it now, whereas you couldn't before. I mean, when I had my kid in 2016, my first child, even my family thought I was crazy. You know, they were not happy about it. But now there have been more people talking about it. And it's our kids. And we do have an autism epidemic, and it's getting worse by the day. So we have to figure it out. So I'm glad, even if we don't agree, at least we're talking about it now because we couldn't talk about it before.
You and I might agree more than you think. I'm just saying my dad was a doctor, yes, and he specialized in MMR, so I actually know a lot about that one in particular. And just judging from the evidence from my point of view, it's been proven to be really efficacious. But I 100% agree with you and Anna that the vaccine schedule for young babies is way too aggressive, and it's been compromised and adulterated by the influenced big pharma.
And also, what's in them? You know, what if we had a vaccine for the MMR that might not have some of the...
Yeah, one last thing I'll say about this is also the DSM-5, which is a manual that doctors use to diagnose autism, has been overly broad, in my opinion.
I agree.
So a lot of people have been swept under the definition of autism, and they may not be autistic.
Well, the way that the DSM is written, I think there's too much influence from the pharmaceutical industry, right? So they start including all these diagnoses that I think are just characteristics of being a human being. You know what I'm saying?
All right, folks, I have to give RFK Jr. some credit. One of the most important things, one of the most important pledges that he made that he hasn't yet carried out yet, but I really hope he will, is taking pharmaceutical money off the airwaves. They have so much power.
That would be amazing.
Because that would be amazing.
I'm tired of seeing the pharmaceutical ads myself. They're so cheesy.
Yeah, but right now they have so much control over the American psyche, over the American Congress. We got to kneecap them. We just have to.
Do you guys think that they intentionally name pharmaceutical drugs like what could be rapper names to make them sound cooler, like Skyrizzy?
I used to work for Merck, and actually, Anna, you inadvertently or that's actually what, not after rapper names, but innocent sounding names to not make people realize that they're really just out for your money.
Yeah, that's true.
They want lifelong patience. They want you sick. They want you hooked.
Yeah.
But we have one final topic which is going to be presented by the lovely Anna. And it's going to be something that'll, I think, strike a chord for a lot of people who have lost a loved one.
Yes, and I'm very curious to hear what you all think about this. So one of the many things that Silicon Valley thinks we'd appreciate when it comes to artificial intelligence is its ability to bring an artificial version of our dead relatives back from the dead.
Yeah.
And so check out this video, and after you do, I'll explain who's behind it.
He's getting bigger. See?
Oh, honey, that's wonderful.
Kicking like crazy.
He's listening. Put your hand on your tummy and hum to him. You used to love that.
It feels like he's dancing in there.
Oh, honey.
Mom, would you tell Charlie that bedtime story you always used to tell me?
Once upon a time, there was a baby unicorn who didn't know he knew how to fly. This baby unicorn was like your mom because she didn't know that she knew how to fly, but she knew how to do all kinds of fabulous things.
Hi, Grandma.
Hey, Charlie. How was school today?
It was really fun. I made this crazy shot in basketball.
I don't really care that much about basketball. What about the crush?
Stop. Grandma, stop talking.
Just tell me one thing.
Look who's gonna be a great grandmother.
Oh, Charlie. Oh, congratulations.
She says that he's been kicking a lot, though. Like, a little too much.
Tell her to put her hand on her tummy and hum to him. You loved that.
You would have loved this moment.
You can call anytime.
Oh my gosh.
I really know how to
Okay,
pull
Mom,
on
I
our
just need a quick
heartstrings.
thing.
Is this like an audition or something?
No, Mom. Just 3 minutes.
You need my best side?
Can I see another one?
I can play the piano.
She's so talented.
I am. I'm your mother after all.
Keep going. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
All right. So the guy who posted that video on X is Callum Worthy. He's the, sorry, it's like, that video makes me emotional just because like my mom's going through cancer and recovering from it. So like the thought of losing my mom is obviously very difficult. And this is the kind of stuff that would theoretically appeal to me, but it actually doesn't at all. And I'll explain why in just a minute. Callum Worthy, he's the CEO and head of a tech company called Two Way. And so the whole idea here is, you know, your loved ones might pass away, but AI has the ability to kind of like bring this artificial version of them to your life. And the reason why I don't like it is because I think that losing people we love throughout our lives is a part of the human experience. And I know for a fact that regardless of how good AI is, they're not going to capture who my mom really is. And I feel like this is going to prolong the grieving process in a lot of ways. I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm going to opt for something like this.
Yeah, Anna, first of all, I'm so sorry for what you're going
okay,
through.
it's okay.
And, yeah, your mother raised a phenomenal daughter. I just want to say that. My response to this whole thing is going to be an Emily Dickinson quote. I am a bibliophile from the bottom of my heart. And she said this. Emily Dickinson is obviously one of the most famous American poets ever. And she lived a life of solitude. And she said this, that it will never come again is what makes life so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
And I think, Anna, this echoes what you said about AI never being able to capture those facial expressions, those nuances that only your mom can offer.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen how faulty AI has been already. I'm sure it's going to keep improving. I think it's going to be really crappy if this technology exists, you lose a loved one, and then you kind of lean on this technology in order to feel like your loved one is still with you, and then they like misrepresent who your loved one is.
It's going to draw in a lot of people.
Right, I think so
Because
too.
when you lose someone you love like that, and I am very sorry to hear about your mother. I've been there.
Yeah.
I lost my father to cancer in January of 2020, right before the pandemic. I had just found out I was pregnant with my second child, my daughter.
Wow.
And we didn't know it was a girl yet. And he was the best grandfather you can ever imagine. He's still my son's favorite person. And so it's funny because you say about delaying the grieving process. It just changes. you're always kind of grieving in a way.
Of course.
It just changes because for me right now with my daughter, she's now 5, I especially this week, it seems like I've noticed more the little things she does, what she says, what she's learning at school. I keep thinking, I would love for Dad to see that. I wonder what Dad would have thought about that. And I think this technology tempts you into, that would be very appealing because you could have some pseudo version of that. It feels real, but there's a danger in that. Because it's another way for us to give control over to the AI beast,
Yes,
if you will. We don't need AI. You know, that Emily Dickinson quote, so beautiful, so spot on, so perfect. I'm gonna write that down and post it, you know, on my desk because I think I needed that. That's beautiful. We don't need AI. The oligarchs need AI.
Absolutely.
The surveillance capitalism state needs AI. The impending social credit system needs AI. And it's another way to pull on our emotions and our grief and to get us to give them that power.
Emerald, amen.
So true.
And you remind me of something I read the other day. Right now, AI companies, they consider what we give them infinitely more valuable than the information that they give back. So they will do everything they can to get us to just shove our data and all of our private information because all that is just, you know, fodder for the LLMs and for their empires.
That's so true. And another way to think about it is, as you're inputting this data, providing this data, you're also offering up free labor to these tech companies that then make a killing in profits by rolling out this type of technology. And yeah, the other thing I'll just say is when you really stop and live in the present and understand how precious life is, how temporary life is, you appreciate it a lot more. You appreciate your loved ones a lot more. I spend as much time with my family as I can, even given like my busy work schedule, because I know that my parents aren't gonna be with me for the rest of my life. And I also kind of worry about creating this false sense of infinite access to your loved ones. That's, again, a false sense, because this is a synthetic version of your loved ones. You know what I'm saying? It's not really
and
who
this
they
is
are.
us playing God. We were never meant to play God. And also, it's just also parasocial to have these relationships. And we have already, actually, there are several lawsuits percolating in the justice system of parents suing these AI firms and their chatbots because these chatbots ended up goading their kids into suicide or other self-harm.
Well, and that's where it really scares me is, you know, looking at posterity's sake, our children will grow up in a digitized world if we allow this to keep going the way it is. These AI companies can set up any reality for them that they want to, and they can determine what is truth. It's whatever reality, whatever truth they create. And our children won't have the ability to know the difference, really. So getting back to your, this reminded me of something I wrote not long ago. I said, the truth will always remain in print that cannot be altered or falsified or touched by machines, by old books. And I'm trying to teach my kids to be bibliophiles as well.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Send them to me. I love books. They're my best friends.
Me too.
Abraham
well,
Lincoln
you would
said,
love my house then, because I'm just surrounded by
you
books.
mentioned that. You should come to my house. My entire wall is books. Abraham, I live by the Abraham Lincoln quote. My best friend is someone who would give me a new book I haven't read. But I also just want to, you bring up a really important point. Did you know that when Facebook bought Instagram around 2012, that's when the math and English testing scores completely cratered? Our children's ability to retain information in the TikTok age has completely collapsed.
Yep, their focus is just not where it needs to be. I think the COVID shutdowns have a lot to do with that as well. So it's really like a double punch in the future of these young kids. And I have a lot of respect for parents who don't give in to the pressure to like digitize every waking moment of their children's lives. Like so many parents, like just here's an iPad, stop crying.
The babysitter.
Yes. Exactly. And Anna, you bring up a really good point too, because have you ever noticed it's the oligarchs who refuse to give their children the products that they are hawking to the American people. Bill Gates refuses to give his products to his children. Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan refuses to allow their children to use Facebook and other apps.
So true.
And it's just like, hello, why do you think that's the case? Because they know at a certain point when your brain is still formative it's poison to the children's minds.
And so that's why I'm a huge proponent of classical education, and that's what my kids are in. They don't touch an iPad.
I love that.
Of course, when they're in high school, they're going to have to use the computer to write, because they write basically a dissertation by the end, by the time they're in 12th grade. But they have actual books and interaction and learn, and they don't touch this technology.
They touch
and
grass.
I can tell such a huge
They play like kids, like we used to, like back in the day. Do you remember? Like go to the mall, go to the movies,
run outside,
hang
out with friends,
and read, and sit outside under a tree and read.
Anyway, this was a fabulous episode. Emerald, you completely shined, and we are so happy to have had you today. Where can our audience find you?
Sure. You can watch me every day from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern on LindellTV.com. You can read. I tend to put out my investigative reporting, my analysis at emerald.tv, and you can follow me on X. I said I'm a little nicer in person, but you can follow me on X at Emerald Robinson.
Fantastic. Anna?
You can find me at The Young Turks. That's youtube.com/The Young Turks, on Minect, and also on social media at Anna Kasparian.
I'm Lindy Lee on everything. Call or text me on Minect. And please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We read your comments. Your feedback means the world to us. We love you so much and can't wait to be back with you next time. Thank you so much.